Hello. Today I will be going over part of Module 2, which involves looking at biological molecules. Now I've split this lecture into two parts. The first video will be on dehydration and hydrolysis reactions. And the second video will be on the four groups of biological molecules. So let's get started. So as I told you, the first topic is dehydration and hydrolysis reactions. Now, these learning objectives are for the entire PowerPoint. So you're going to need to be able to identify the monomers for carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids. You will also need to be able to describe the property that unifies all lipids. Finally, you have to be able to apply the functions of these different, what we call macromolecules, large molecules, to the functioning of the cell. So for this first part, you need to explain how polymers are created and broken down. So what I'm showing you here is the difference between a monomer and a polymer. So the term monomer means one unit. Mono meaning one, MER meaning unit. Now, a monomer is not a single atom. A monomer is a molecule. So let me give you an example of a monomer. So what I'm drawing here is an amino acid monomer. Now, remember, this is an entire molecule, and every time that I draw a line, that is a covalent bond. So what you're looking at here is many different atoms combined together to make a single monomer or molecule. So remember that a molecule is two or more atoms bonded together. Now, if you look at the picture here, it is showing you a monomer. Now, monomers join together with covalent bonds to form polymers. Take a moment here to remind yourself of what a covalent bond is. Remember that there are polar covalent bonds and non-polar covalent bonds. It's always a good idea when you hear terms like covalent bond to make sure that you know what that means. And that is what we covered in the first part of Module 2. So a polymer, poly means many, MER means unit, many units or molecules bonded together. So when I'm talking about biological molecules or macromolecules, it's the same thing. I'm talking about many monomers bonded together to form these large molecules. So I'm going to write down a couple of notes for you here. I think that it's helpful when learning all of these scientific terms to kind of break down the terms when possible. So monomer, mono equals one, MER equals unit. Remember, by unit, I mean molecule. So then let's go down here. Poly equals many, MER equals unit. Many molecules bonded together with covalent bonds. So I'm going to write that here for you. Many monomers, which are molecules, bonded together with covalent bond. Now, I'm not going to pause here. You can just pause the video to write down this information if you'd like to. So let's look at how polymers are formed and broken down. So there are two types of reactions, dehydration reactions and hydrolysis reactions. So what you're looking at here in this picture is the same monomer that I drew for you in the previous slide. So the monomer is this entire molecule. The polymer is two of these molecules bonded together. Okay, so take a second and look at this individual monomer and then compare it to the polymer that you see here. Okay, we have a nitrogen right here for our monomer. Here is that nitrogen for the first monomer. Here is that nitrogen for the second. Okay. Now, a hydrolysis reaction breaks down polymers into monomers. Now, the way that this is done is a water is added into the reaction, and that helps to break the covalent bond. Let me look at this for a second. Ah, yes, I skipped a slide. Sorry about that. So let's take a step back. A dehydration reaction joins monomers. So I apologize about skipping through the slides here. There seems to be an issue with my computer. It keeps like jumping slides. Okay, so we have a dehydration reaction. So what do you think of when you think of being dehydrated? Well, your body is losing water. Water is being released from your body. So as I said, water is being released. Now, a dehydration reaction joins monomers with a covalent bond. So one thing to remember here is that with a dehydration reaction, you're going from a small molecule to a large molecule, monomer to polymer. So let's look at the picture here. Again, this is the same monomer I showed you in the previous slide. So here we have a monomer and here we have a monomer. Now, what happens in dehydration is that an OH, an oxygen and a hydrogen are lost from one monomer, and a hydrogen or H is lost from the other monomer. So the OH and H are released as water. Now, when those are released, a new covalent bond is formed between the nitrogen and the carbon. So here's our new covalent bond. Okay, so in dehydration, an OH is lost from one side and H from the other monomer, forming water. Water is being released. And then in its place, a covalent bond is formed, linking the monomers. Okay. So I want to take a second here and show you how this works in a chemical reaction. And I'm not going to write out the chemical formula. So let's take a look at this. Type it. So when you're looking at a chemical reaction, everything on the left side of the reaction are what go into the reaction. Everything on the right side is what is produced or given off. So we can have an amino acid plus an amino acid I'm going to run out of space here, so let me move this. I'm going to put it up on top here. Okay, so we have an amino acid plus an amino acid. And then the arrow represents the chemical reaction. So on the other side of the chemical reaction, we have a polymer, which in this case is a protein. Actually, I'm not going to write that, plus a water. Now, remember that the amino acids that I'm writing down in this chemical reaction, those are monomers. Okay. They join together through dehydration to form a polymer. But notice that one of the products on the right side of the equation is water. Water is being released. So dehydration, you go from small molecules to large molecule, and a water is given off. So now let's look at the other type of reaction. This is hydrolysis. Now think about when you hydrate, you drink water. Well, in a hydrolysis reaction, water is going into the reaction. And as a result, those covalent bonds are breaking. So in hydrolysis, we go from a large molecule to small molecules. I'm going to write that here for you. Hydrolysis. Okay, so you're going large to small. Whereas in dehydration, you're going from small to large. So they're opposite processes. Now, like I said, in hydrolysis, a water is going into the reaction. So notice here, again, with our amino acids, those are the monomers, and it's only showing you in this picture a little bit of the amino acid. But if you notice where the circle is, that's where you have the covalent bond that joins those two amino acids. Now we add that water, and OH from the water goes on to one amino acid, and H from the water goes on to the other amino acid. Now they are broken down into those monomers again. So let's take a look at how this works with chemical reaction. So remember, in a chemical reaction, everything on the left side of the reaction is what is going into it. Everything on the right side are your products. That is what is being released. So here we have, I'm just going to write polymer plus water, H2O. I'm going to draw my arrow. So the arrow shows you the chemical reaction. Now I have a monomer plus a monomer. Move that down. There we go. Okay, so when I ask you a question on a quiz or your final, and I'm asking you what type of reaction are you looking at, dehydration or hydrolysis? All you have to do is look at the placement of the water. Is it on the left side of the equation, so it's hydrolysis, or the right side of the equation, meaning it's dehydration? So even if you don't know the components that go into the reaction, you can still determine if it's dehydration or hydrolysis. So what I'm going to do now, for those of you in my synchronous lecture, you know that I ask poll questions during lecture. I call it a poll question because that's how I deliver it on Zoom. For those of you in my asynchronous lecture, you are not familiar with these. But the benefit of these poll questions is that a lot of times they're quiz questions that I ask you later on, but it also gives you an opportunity to test yourself. So, whoops, let me show you this poll question here. As soon as I find it, there it is. Okay. So the question that I asked during this lecture is, what name is given to the following reaction? So we have sucrose plus water, the chemical reaction occurs, and then you have glucose plus fructose. Now at this point, you have no idea what those molecules are, but that's okay. Because if you look at this chemical reaction, water is on the left-hand side. That means water is going into the reaction. Therefore, it has to be hydrolysis. Okay. Now, the other thing to notice is that in hydrolysis, you go from a large molecule to small molecules. And even if you don't know what sucrose, glucose, and fructose are, you should notice that sucrose is one molecule. And as products, you now have two molecules. So that should also clue you into the fact that it is hydrolysis. So let me write you a couple notes here. Okay, so this is a summary of hydrolysis. Large molecule to small molecules. Water goes into the reaction. So I am going to end this video here. Now, just so you know, I like to divide my videos into little segments so you can go back and select the segment that you need to review. This is so you don't have to sit through a huge long video. So my next video will be over the biological molecules, which are part of Module 2.